catalog of crises. As share prices fall to the year's lowest levels and investors grow ever more wary, can the economy still recover?
There are some bad apples, and the business world must clean up its act.
But should the government force changes with new laws? We'll ask Treasury Secretary Paul O'Neill.
Plus, new questions about Homeland Security amid threats of July 4th attacks and a shocking lapse in White House security. Are we safe? We'll ask two men investigating that question, Senate Intelligence Committee heads Bob Graham and Richard Shelby.
Also this week, at issue. New violence postpones a White House speech on the Middle East. Will President Bush still give the speech? And what difference will it make?
That's This Week, featuring George Will. And joining our roundtable, Newsweek International Editor Fareed Zakaria and National Public Radio's Karen Grigsby Bates. Now, Cokie Roberts and George Stephanopoulos.
Welcome to the program. Sam Donaldson is off this week. In the news this morning, two stories related to the war on terrorism. Arab news sources claim that Osama bin Laden is alive and well and planning a July 4th address to his followers with more attacks on the United States promised. And here at home, the FBI now believes that the anthrax found in letters sent to senators is only about 2 years old. That raises concerns that the person who sent it has access to more of the deadly powder and could strike again. Later in the broadcast, we'll talk to the leaders of the Senate Intelligence Committee about those stories and the rest of the war on terrorism. And also this morning, a death in the family. Eppie Lederer, who for 47 years as Ann Landers handed out advice to millions, died at the age of 83. George?
And Cokie, more trouble this morning for another cultural icon. New evidence obtained by ABC News has congressional investigators asking whether Martha Stewart was acting on inside information when she sold her stake in the cancer drug firm ImClone last December. It's the latest in a wave of corporate scandals that have helped drive the stock market to lows not seen since the days after September 11th. We start with two reports, from Bill Blakemore with the latest on Martha Stewart and Betsy Stark with what it means for the markets.
What did Martha Stewart know when she told stockbroker Peter Bukanovic to sell $250,000 of ImClone stock? Did she know that the next day ImClone would announce problems that would further weaken the stock? Shortly before he made the sale for Stewart, Bukanovic had reportedly sold a lot of ImClone stock for the daughter of Sam Waxel, the CEO of ImClone. Bukanovic then tried to reach Waxel's friend, Martha Stewart. A memo from Stewart's secretary reports, amid notes about plum puddings and lampshades, that Bukanovic thinks ImClone is going to start trading downward.
And he didn't say that he's watched it go down on the market. He said he thinks it's going to, which is, leads one to believe that that was inside information that he had that he then passed on to Ms. Stewart.
Congressman James Greenwood, whose committee is investigating ImClone, says Martha Stewart then called Bukanovic back before he made the sale for her. Greenwood's committee will interview the stockbroker.
We'll certainly ask him questions about his conversation with Ms. Stewart, and we'll see where that leads us.
It's all creating nervousness on Wall Street, not only because Martha Stewart is a major CEO, but also because she was recently made a member of the New York Stock Exchange's Board of Directors. Merrill Lynch has already suspended stockbroker Bukanovic for possible violations in his stock sale for Stewart. For This Week, this is Bill Blakemore in New York.
Martha Stewart joins a growing list of corporate titans who have fallen from grace. ImClone CEO Sam Waxel arrested for insider trading. Tyco CEO Dennis Kozlowski indicted for tax evasion. Quest CEO Joseph Naccio forced to resign amid an SEC accounting probe. WorldCom CEO Bernie Ebbers forced to resign after borrowing more than $350 million in company funds to cover personal debts. All this while the watchdogs looked the other way. Boards of directors failed to rein in CEOs. Accountants approved misleading financial reports. Analysts issued buy ratings they knew were wrong.
I think a lot of investors are looking, saying, who's next? What's going on here? Who's playing by the rules and who isn't?
They've been battered by Enron-itis and analyst-itis and auditor-itis, and I think they're more than a little cautious, and that's why the market is just been dripping down day after day.
With the loss of investor faith has come a staggering loss of investor wealth.
It's a very difficult time for small investors, large investors as well, to commit money to a market where they've lost so much confidence. That's the bad news, and it's hard to make the case for a better market when you have that kind of an environment.
The crisis of confidence is also complicating the economic recovery, which has been tentative at best. Now it's up to lawmakers, regulators, and corporate executives to agree on a way to fix the problem. For This Week, I'm Betsy Stark in New York.
Treasury Secretary Paul O'Neill joins us now. Good to see you again, Mr. Secretary.
Nice to be with you, George.
Martha Stewart's the story of the day, but it seems like every morning we make up and there's another story about corporate wrongdoing in the newspapers. This month's Fortune magazine, and we're going to show it now, its cover says this is a sign of a system failure in corporate America. Do you agree that there's a system failure?
Well, certainly there are more than enough cases to be outraged about, and I think anyone who's paying attention ought to be outraged about the things that keep tumbling out. But we need to move from outrage to action, and that's what we've been trying to do. In March, the President proposed that we take 10 specific actions to close the door on the possibility of people doing outrageous things that abuses their trust. And a good part of that agenda has now been put in place, including action by Harvey Pitt and the SEC to require CEOs and chief financial officers to certify to their personal knowledge that what they report is true and honest, so that we will now have a clear right of action under the law to prosecute and bring to justice those who abuse their trust. But there's still a few things that need action by the Congress. We need a new framework for regulating the audit function and the accounting companies. And we need a stronger authority to actually recapture money from people who've abused their trust. The amount of money some of these people have taken out and gotten away with is just unconscionable, and we need a law so that we can get it back.
Well, that's interesting, sir, and as you know, Congress is now taking action. For example, this week, Republicans and Democrats on the Senate Banking Committee approved an independent board to monitor the accounting industry and said that auditors can no longer also consult at the same companies. Do you support that legislation?
Well, what's happened is the Senate committee has acted. The legislation needs to go into a conference committee between the Senate and the House. Chairman Oxley in the House pushed the bill through the House of Representatives some time ago. So we're anxious to see this finally resolved and get it on the President's desk so we can sign it and we can take away any uncertainty about whether people are going to be punished for doing these awful things.
So let me get that straight. You believe that the President can sign something like that bill by Senator Sarbanes that passed the Senate Banking Committee this week?
The President called for action on the 7th of March. Like so many things, we're anxious for the Congress to act on things like this. You know, we're still waiting for terrorist risk insurance to emerge from the Congress. We're anxious for that. And so there are a number of things, including this, that we need action from the Congress. The President's ready to sign something.
I do want to pin that down. So the President will sign a bill that bars auditors from also being consultants and that sets up an independent board monitoring the accounting industry.
We'll see what comes out of the conference committee, George. You know, my own view is that we should have laws that are very strong, but things that are change over time should be subject to regulation instead of laws. And this is an area where we might be better served by having a predilection towards separating auditing and accounting. But if there's a proper regulatory body, that regulatory body could make that judgment.
But as you know, the Majority Leader of the Senate, Tom Dasch, and others say that if it's done by the SEC, the proposal they have now, it's a toothless tiger, and that you need a body that has the authority that comes from being created by law.
Well, you know, my own view is this. There are some things that need to be hard and fast in the law. There are others that need to be subject to regulation. And to say that regulatory bodies don't do what we want them to do is to say there's something wrong with the whole process of regulatory bodies. I just don't buy that.
Another problem that a lot of people have talked about is this issue of runaway corporate pay. And we're going to show a chart right now that's really a rogues gallery. Ken Lay got $188 million in stock options in the last 3 years. Jeffrey Skilling of Enron, $112 million. Tyco's Dennis Kozlowski, $240 million. Joe Nacchio of Quest, $232 million just before he got fired. And as you know, even when there's no corruption or incompetence involved, people like Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan have said there's a real problem with these stock options because they're not counted against corporate earnings. They artificially inflate earnings of the company and maybe stock prices. So he said these should be treated, these stock options should be treated as a corporate expense. Do you agree?
Well, I think this. I think the corporate pay, especially the amount of money some of these people have ripped off when they've been abusing their trust, it's an outrage. Now, I don't think, frankly, that the U.S. government should decide how much people should get paid, either CEOs or line-level workers who are making goods and services out there for $50,000 or $20,000 a year. It's just not the, it's not the job of the government to set pay levels, but it is the job of board of directors to set pay levels. And I think boards of directors across America need to look at these compensation levels, however it's delivered, whether through options or shares or even through cash. I think boards of directors have got to raise a higher standard and insist that these over-the-top levels of compensation stop.
Right, but I'm asking a specific question about the stock options. On April 1st, you said that stock options ought to be considered as expenses when they're sold.
Absolutely, and I tell you, I think we need a far better job done in stock options and making it clear to every shareholder and every member of the public how much prospective money is attached to the granting of stock options. It should be done the day that the options are granted. There's a calculation process that you can anticipate what these things can be worth so that everyone understands how much prospective money is on the table when options are given. There shouldn't be any doubt about that.
Sir, as you know, there have been a lot of fallout from this crisis in confidence in corporate America. And one of them, a lot of people are pointing to not only the stock market at near 9/11 lows, but also the dollar. I want to show right now a chart that shows the dollar has dropped this year about 8%, and it's at a near 2-year low versus the euro. You said this week in a speech that the fundamentals of our economy continue to be strong. But if the U.S. economy is so strong, why does the dollar seem so weak?
Well, I don't know, George. It takes a little perspective, I think, to look at these issues. When the euro was floated for the first time a couple of years ago, it was selling at 117, and today it's 95 or 96, something in that order of magnitude. It's been as low as 83. What's the right number? The market decides what the right number is, George.
So you're not worried about the falling dollar?
I tell you what, my greatest focus is to take the actions with the President's leadership to create confidence so that the American people and investors around the world have confidence that what's said is true. And then we need to create a regulatory framework and a tax framework, for that matter, that encourages a continuation of the wonderful levels of productivity that we're experiencing in this economy. There's no other economy in the world that even approaches the economic engine that creates income and wealth as the one we have here in the United States. We need to cherish it. We need to protect it. Where we've got a problem with some bad actors taking advantage of us and abusing their trust, we need to close the door on them. And, you know, I do have great confidence. Our economy is going to go forward. We're going to be fine.
Finally, sir, I want to touch on the issue of the debt limit. You've been warning for weeks that if Congress doesn't raise the debt limit this week, the government won't be able to pay its bills. And I want to show a statement from May 14th, the Treasury Department, where it was written, lack of certainty by June 26th, this Wednesday, as to how the Treasury will fund these payments will challenge the Treasury's ability to ensure timely processing of payments to Social Security and other beneficiaries. So does that mean that July Social Security's checks won't go out if the Congress doesn't raise the debt limit this week?
Well, let me correct one thing you said, George. You said I've been warning for weeks. I've been warning since December the 5th that the Congress needs to take bipartisan action to raise the debt ceiling. I've got a lot of confidence that the Congress is not going to fail us as an institution. They need to raise the debt ceiling. They don't really have a choice. They've already voted the money that's being spent that is pushing us up against the debt ceiling. And so they need to come together in a bipartisan way. The Senate did it last week, we need the House of Representatives to come together in a bipartisan, nonpartisan way and do the thing that's necessary so we can not have this shadow over our ability to pay our fair and true debts.
But, sir, Republican leaders in the House say they don't have the votes. If they don't pass it this week, do you have anything left in your quiver? Can you find a way to pay those checks?
Well, I tell you, this is not a Republican issue. This is an issue for the House of Representatives. These are the people who represent, in numbers, 435 districts around the United States. You know, there've got to be a majority of people who care about honoring the Constitution and passing this legislation.
But, sir,
don't ask me how they do it, George. You know, executive branch should not dabble in the affairs of how Congress gets its work done. They need to do it without doubt, and I can't believe they're going to fail the country.
I'm asking how you will do it. When will the government hit the wall?
Well, if they don't act, we're going to hit the wall sometime probably by next weekend, because on Sunday next weekend we've got to certify Social Security payments, and we have some other large payments that have got to come. And so before the Congress leaves Washington, either on Thursday or Friday, their schedule's a little unclear at the moment, I've got confidence they will live up to their responsibility. They will not fail the American people.
Secretary O'Neill, thank you very much.
My pleasure, George.
When we come back, as July 4th approaches, are we safer now than on September 11th? The men in charge of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Bob Graham and Richard Shelby, join us after this.
This week with Sam Donaldson and Cokie Roberts. Brought to you by GE. From plastics to financial services, we bring good things to life.
Hello, Rome. This is Bob Mullins from GE Insight in Milwaukee. We're monitoring your MRI machine, and we think you might have a problem.
Doctors depend on the GE MRI to make critical decisions. That's why GE monitors 13,000 medical machines from around the world 24 hours a day. So advanced GE medical technology is always ready.
È tutto a posto.
Just doing my job.
Bad day?
Just lost my second account this month.
Your inventory numbers aren't up to date, so the business goes to somebody else.
I feel like I've got loser written right here.
Don't beat yourself up. If your company had a Sprint PCS Clear Wireless Workplace, you'd get your information in real time over your wireless phone.
I have what it takes.
You do now.
The most advanced business tools customized for your company.
Osama bin Laden sightings, anthrax worries, and new threats are all in the news this week as the Congressional Intelligence Committees continue their investigation into the lead-up to September 11th. This week, we learned that the National Security Agency received signals in Arabic on September 10th that something big would happen the next day. Those communications were translated into English on September 12th. Joining us now to discuss the ongoing threat is Senate Intelligence Committee Chairman Bob Graham, who's with us from Miami, Florida. Good morning, Senator. And here in the studio, the highest-ranking Republican on the committee, Richard Shelby. Thanks for being here. Well, gentlemen, what about these latest reports that Osama bin Laden is well, alive, and appearing on videotape?
The intelligence community has been telling us for the past several months that their best assessment is that bin Laden is still alive, probably living in those tribal territories on the western side of Pakistan. This seems to be a further confirmation of that.
Do you think that he continues to be a threat?
Yes, in fact, I think...
I was actually directing that to Senator Shelby. I know
Go ahead, I'll defer to Bob.
You can't see that here.
I agree that he does continue to be a threat, assuming he's alive. And if he's not alive,
his organization, which is dispersed all over the world now, we believe continues to be a threat. He could be dead, Koki, but I've always been a doubter, and I will believe that he's really dead when we read the forensic report, and maybe even doubt it then.
Koki, I think one of the scary things is that it appears as if al-Qaeda is regenerating, whether it has bin Laden at the top or not. The recent attack against a synagogue in Tunisia has now been definitely linked to al-Qaeda. I was in Hamburg, Germany 3 weeks ago and told about the new activities of the al-Qaeda cell there, which you'll remember was the place from which several of the hijackers came, and we've had these new threats against the United States.
Now, Senator Graham, I know you've had some ongoing briefings and that you can't tell me, both senators, about classified information, but do the briefings confirm this idea that the al-Qaeda is really gearing up for another set of attacks?
I have to say generically that's true. They're all over the world. They've been trying to regroup, and Koki, I believe they're going to continue to be a real problem. They could hit us any day. I hope it never happens, but they're out there.
Now, what about these reports about anthrax? That the anthrax that came to your office building was recently made, probably by somebody with access to a laboratory, and that he could make it again.
Well, it's a new finding. Basically, from what I read this morning, I have not been briefed on this recently, but what I read this morning was there have been some updating of the anthrax. In other words, it's not old anthrax. It was relatively new, I believe 2 years old, and some of the concerns are there that it could be someone working in a lab even today that could create some more or get some more out there. We just don't know.
Senator Graham, why has the FBI been so impotent on this question? Why are they keep not even getting a lead?
Koki, they're working this case very hard, but apparently it's difficult both technically in terms of the analysis of the anthrax. It's now been, what, 8 or 9 months that they've had this material, and just this weekend announced the recent determination that it was new as opposed to anthrax that had been on the shelf for a long time. I can't criticize the FBI. They are doing their job as the most professional law enforcement investigative agency in the world. It's just a very tough case.
Now, we have, though, in the last few weeks, certainly heard about failures at the FBI, failures at the CIA, and now this week, failures at the National Security Agency. Senator Shelby, what does that tell you about our intelligence forces?
Well, I think overall you have to put the NSA, National Security Agency, in a class by itself. It does great work. Senator Graham and I have been working hard on the committee for the last several years to modernize, to get NSA on the cutting edge of technology like they were in the past. General Hayden, I think, is a great leader out there. He is really pushing hard to do this. Now, having said that...
But even he says that
right.
they have not kept up with the global telecommunications revolution. Why not?
Well, a lot of reasons why not, because they haven't been funded. Senator Graham and I work on the authorizing committee. We have tried hard to get all the money. You're talking about a lot of money. We won't tell you what, to keep them on the cutting edge. And they're moving in the right direction. And General Hayden's leading this, and we're helping. But they're not there yet. But considering everything, they do a good job. They handle millions and millions of pieces of information. And it's a question of how much do they translate, how much do they analyze, and how much do they disseminate.
Senator Graham, of course, the information about the NSA came out of the committee hearings, and the administration was said to be hopping mad about the leak. What are you doing about it?
Well, first, Koki, this information was reported by another news channel than the one who did it on Thursday, several days earlier. So there was obviously a source of information prior to the hearings that we conducted this week. But the whole issue of dealing appropriately with classified information is of great importance to the nation and to our committees. Not just because of the specific piece of information, but because by disclosing it, you're disclosing the method by which that information was collected. I'm certain that there's, if he's still alive, there's a terrorist somewhere who communicated information back in September of 2001 and now understands that we were listening to that communication, and he or she is not likely to use the same form of communication in the future, and so we've lost a valuable source. We have asked the Department of Justice to do a comprehensive investigation to determine the source of this, and we will fully support their investigation.
I suppose I should ask pro forma, neither of you gentlemen is the source of the leak.
Well, I'm not the source, and I know Senator Graham is not the source, but there could be many sources, as Senator Graham talked about. It could have come somewhere before we ever had a hearing on this.
Now, let me ask you, because we are turning now to the subject of the Middle East in this broadcast, and as we know, President Bush was scheduled to make a speech on that subject this week. He wasn't scheduled. We expected a speech, and he has postponed it because of activities in Israel. Should President Bush be calling Senator Shelby for an interim Palestinian state?
Well, that's a dicey proposition right now. I don't know how you can create a Palestinian state at the moment with all the violence that's going on, all the terrorist attacks. If I were Mr. Sharon, I would want him to hold off and push back. Who are you going to deal with? I personally believe that Arafat is a spent force. So if he's going to head up the so-called Palestinian state, I don't think it's going to go very far.
Senator Graham, should the president even give this speech?
Koki, I am very concerned about the next few days and weeks in the Middle East. There's a convergence of factors. We have the Israelis threatening and in some cases actually reoccupying territory that had been ceded to the Palestinians as part of the Oslo process. We have external terrorist groups who are now assisting the Palestinian terrorist groups and have contributed to the fact that the techniques of the Palestinians and the lethality of the Palestinians has gone up substantially in recent months. And we have Hezbollah threatening to start an artillery assault against northern Israel, with the likelihood that then the Israelis would retaliate with attacks against Lebanon and Syria. It is a very, very serious time in the history of the Middle East, and I think it's going to require the strongest U.S. and international community diplomatic efforts in order to avoid the explosion.
All right. Thank you very much, Senator Bob Graham, Senator Richard Shelby. Thank you both for being with us.
Thank you.
Still ahead, our roundtable and the Georgeville commentary. But first, when we come back, what is President Bush's plan for the Middle East, and will it work? Stay with us.
Well, we first noticed that something was wrong with Christina when she was around 9 months old.
Approximately 3,000 people in the United States have Gaucher's disease.
She was very, very sick and really close to death.
Pharmaceutical companies have developed hundreds of medicines for cancer, heart disease, Alzheimer's, stroke, as well as for rare diseases. Medicines for millions and medicines for only a few.
Christina was the 13th person in the world to be put on the drug.
There's a remarkable change once they're on this drug, such that their life has really returned almost to normal.
I want to be a screenwriter or an archaeologist.
Gaucher's disease is a disease which is genetic in nature.
I work studying the human genome to find new ways to treat disease.
The researchers saved Christina's life, without a doubt.
You go into work every day, and you never know what day you're going to make the big discovery. It's a great time to be a scientist.
She's a pretty amazing girl.
Sometimes it happens between VP and EVP.
Sometimes between daycare and the vet.
But no matter where it happens, it does happen.
You start planning for more than one future.
You discover that unlike bulls and bears, you, my friend, are a thinking animal.
You made the money. You'll choose the partners.
Because it's not enough to just be invested.
You've got to be personally invested.
Fidelity has the products, the tools, and the resources to help you become the investor you want to be. Call, click, or visit.
Tuesday on The Mole, these 8 players have reached the halfway point. Yeah! And there's no turning back.
You're here for yourself and nobody else.
Now a brutal vote.
Rank your fellow players from favorite to least favorite.
Will change the game forever.
I'm going to offer you a bribe, $50,000 if you walk out of the game tonight.
The Mole 2, a new episode this Tuesday, 9/8 Central on ABC.
On trial, Wednesday, a young man
Did his drinking and driving kill his cousin? Now a family torn apart. And a jury room so hot, even you'll feel the heat. People magazine calls it the unbreakable court date. Why settle for another Law & Order repeat when you can watch State Big Wednesday?
At issue this week, President Bush's peace plan on hold. Amid new violence in the Middle East and bureaucratic battles inside his administration, the president postponed a speech set for last week in which he was expected to propose a provisional Palestinian state in the West Bank and Gaza. White House officials now say the speech should come as early as tomorrow, but they're making no promises. Here with us now to discuss the proposal is one of its chief proponents, Adel Al-Jubeir, Foreign Policy Advisor to the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. Good morning, Mr. Al-Jubeir.
Good morning, George.
Has the White House assured you that the president will deliver this speech?
I believe they've assured the world that it's a matter of timing. If it doesn't happen this week, it could happen the following week. But in terms of principle, our understanding is yes, they will deliver the speech.
So you think it's possible that it will not happen this week?
It all depends on what happens on the ground, and it's really a decision for the president to make, and I believe when the time is right, he will make the decision.
Saudi Arabia has been pressing for this kind of proposal for some time, but it now appears that President Bush will condition his support for provisional state on a number of strict reforms. For example, National Security Advisor Condoleezza Rice this week said that Arafat's Palestinian Authority will not be a basis for the Palestinian state moving forward. Can Saudi Arabia accept a plan that calls for Arafat's authority to be replaced?
Well, I think we want to be careful in terms of what it is that the U.S. is going to be doing. The key element of the speech, or the reason behind it, is to lay out a vision for what a final settlement looks like, meaning what happens at the end of the road, what is the end game, in as clear terms as possible. Palestinian state on the occupied territories, 1967, negotiations on the basis of 242-338. There would be conditions on the Palestinians that they need to meet in terms of building institutions that are capable of managing a state. There will be conditions on the Israelis that they in turn have to meet, such as easing the occupation, freezing settlements in order to allow the Palestinians to build their institutions so that they can one day manage the affairs of their state. I wouldn't pick one thing, George, or one element and say it's make or break. Now, when it comes to the Palestinian Authority, when the Palestinian institutions are built, the Palestinians will decide who manages their affairs, and I don't think that there's any debate on this issue.
Late this week, King Abdullah of Jordan said that he made really a remarkable statement about Chairman Arafat. He said that he no longer believes that Chairman Arafat can control his own people and can control his extremism in the Palestinian Authority. Do you agree with that?
To some extent, yes. It is very difficult to control terrorists when you cannot send your security forces from one town to another town. It's very difficult to control violence when your security forces have been decimated and their infrastructure, including the buildings in which they're housed, have been destroyed. It's also very difficult to control rage and violence among young people when, one, you cannot get to them, and two, you have no way of showing them a better future, and three, you have to deal constantly with the humiliations of the occupation.
Mr. Al-Jubeir, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we're now joined by the Newsweek International editor, Fareed Zakaria, and our own George Will. Welcome to both of you. Fareed, let me just pick up there where Mr. Al-Jubeir left off. It seems like there might be a consensus developing in the Arab world. King Abdullah and the Saudi Foreign Policy Advisor both saying that they don't think Arafat can control his people.
Well, you know, George, Arafat gave an interview 3 days ago to Haaretz, one of the leading Israeli newspapers. And it was quite remarkable because he endorsed the Clinton plan, which he had rejected or not endorsed 2 years ago.
Late.
Exactly. And he said he also lashed out against implicitly Iran and Syria for funding and taking advantage of the Palestinian cause to fund these suicide bombers. What this suggests to me is that Arafat has in fact lost control of the movement. It has gotten decentralized with a lot of freelancing going on, and he is grasping for a lifeline. The last time he did this was in 1993 when he signed the Oslo Accords. He was sinking then. He's sinking now, and he hopes he'll have another lifeline, but I think it's too late this time.
Does it matter, George?
It does matter. What our Saudi guest just said was Arafat has lost control, but it's not his fault. It's all Israel's fault. Occupation, destroying their jails that they didn't use anyway. I see no light, really, no distance between the Saudis and Arafat at this point yet.
There does seem to be, though, a great disagreement inside the administration, a lot of light between a lot of different players inside the administration. And Fareed, Is that the real reason that we're not seeing the president's speech this week, or is it because of the violence, or both?
I think it's fundamentally because the administration cannot decide what it wants to say in the speech. You know, there was this debate about this administration. Would it look more like Bush 1 or Reagan? Well, it's looking a lot like the Carter administration with the feuding foreign policy advisors. You have the Defense Department on one side, the State Department on the other, the NSC splitting the difference, and what's emerging is a kind of speech by committee that will pacify everyone, but take absolutely no risks. And I think it's not worth.
What does it mean it'll take no risks?
I think it will not demand very much of Prime Minister Sharon. It will not set up a proposal for any kind of vision for a final settlement. It will probably not have a hard timeline. What you're going to have is a series. It will be so qualified that unless the Palestinians, you know, start writing the Federalist Papers, there will be no movement. And I think if you say that, it's in effect he might as well save his speechwriter's time. And
you don't think he should give the speech, do you?
He should not give a speech. He's having trouble finding a decent interval to give this between episodes of mass murder on the part of the people. He's proposing to create another terrorist state for us. As fast as we destroy them, he would create another one. If he takes that position of a provisional state, he will have been blown there by suicide bombers. That is, we will clearly be rewarding them. And to what end? A provisional state will not earn gratitude for that part of a state that is given. It will only foster resentment of the attributes of statehood that are denied it. It will no more satisfy Arafat than a slice of Czechoslovakia satisfied Hitler.
Well, we'll see if he actually gives it. George Will, Fareed Zakaria, thank you very much. When we come back, the Week in Review, our roundtable, and the George Will commentary. Stay with us.
33,000 miles of timber and steel. From Portland to New Orleans. From Los Angeles to Chicago. And the beauty of a land that spans half a continent. It's been said that in those 33,000 miles of rail, you can feel America's pulse.
When software quickly connects supply and demand, that's one degree of separation. That's business with .NET from Microsoft.
We understand dreams do not come with price tags. And home improvements improve more than just homes. We're Household, and we understand the hopes and financial needs of 50 million everyday people. That's why for nearly 125 years, we've specialized in loans, credit, and understanding. Household, helping everyday people, every day.
This Week with Sam Donaldson and Cokie Roberts will continue in a moment, after this from our ABC stations.
This week, kids and textbook heroes, the changing faces of education. Plus, men forced to pay child support when they're not the father on World News Tonight.
Fly somewhere in the Acura TL Type S.
If you're into this, you gotta have this. With AT&T Digital Cable, you'll find channels that fuel all your outdoor interests. And when you're ready to kick back, Digital Cable has multiple channels of the best premium TV. Call 1-800-CABLE-ME now. Order any digital value package that includes HBO and Showtime and save $10 a month for the first 3 months. Plus, get a $50 gift card from G.I. Joe's. Whatever you're into outdoors, AT&T Digital Cable brings it home.
Watch Athlete of the Year today at 4:30 on K2.
Now for our roundtable discussion of some topics in the news. But first, This Week in Review from ABC's chief Washington correspondent, John Cochran.
Colorado firefighters were stunned when a Forest Service worker, Terry Lynn Barton, was charged with deliberately setting the largest wildfire in the state's history. She pleaded not guilty. The Supreme Court ruled it is unconstitutional to execute the mentally retarded. The landmark decision came in the case of a Virginia prisoner with an IQ of 59. A San Francisco judge unexpectedly tossed out the murder conviction of Marjorie Knoller, whose dog mauled a neighbor.
There really is no evidence that these dogs were trained to attack by these defendants.
Knoller will still be sentenced on lesser charges. Her husband was sentenced to 4 years. In a West Virginia hospital, the FBI found a man wanted for questioning in the kidnapping of 14-year-old Elizabeth Smart. He is listed in serious condition after an apparent drug overdose.
The Justice Department decided not to prosecute Bill Clinton in one of the weirder allegations about the pardons and commutations he granted in the final days of his presidency. Investigators decided Mr. Clinton did not grant clemency to 4 Hasidic Jews just because their tiny community supported Hillary Clinton's bid for the Senate.
Republicans on the House Ways and Means Committee approved a private insurance plan for Medicare drug benefits. Democrats called it a payback to the drug industry for campaign contributions. Once is enough for Minnesota Governor Jesse Ventura, who announced he will not seek re-election. He complained reporters have violated his family's privacy.
The media is about personal assassination.
In the World Cup, the American soccer team came close, agonizingly close, but lost to Germany in the quarterfinals. Finally, Forbes magazine's top 10 list of the most powerful celebrities based on money and fame. His fellow golfers can't beat him, but this time Tiger Woods is only the runner-up, beaten by Britney Spears, who has some trophies of her own, including 3 multi-platinum albums. For This Week in Review, this is John Cochran.
Well, joining us this week is Karen Grigsby Bates. Thanks for being with us, Karen.
Thanks for having me.
National Public Radio colleague. And Fareed and George are still with us. Now, we had a very interesting decision by the Supreme Court this week saying that retarded people cannot be executed, cannot be administered the death penalty. It's a reversal of a decision 13 years ago, George.
What they said is that evolving standards of decency have evolved in the 13 years, and there now is a consensus in the country that this is cruel and unusual. The problem comes when they try to establish their evidence for that. They cited opinion polls, they cited foreign laws. The pertinence of that to our constitutional law is a mystery. And they said, well, 18 states have rather recently passed laws protecting the mentally retarded from execution.
Including the state from which the original case came. They had to take a different case.
Correct. But 20 states, if we're just counting states, 20 states, a majority, have not done so. So if that's their evidence of a consensus, they need to find more evidence.
But George, the dissent gets its point across using a remarkable sleight of hand, because Justice Scalia says that the reason he knows that, that there is no evolving consensus is because only 18 states are opposed to executing the mentally retarded. But he does not count the other 12 states. There are an additional 12 states that oppose executing anyone. And I think one can reasonably assume they also don't want to execute the mentally retarded. Now, Justice Scalia is brilliant and I'm not, but 18 plus 12 is equal to 30, which is a clear majority.
Karen, what I found so interesting is that they did use this precedent established by Chief Justice Warren, that the Eighth Amendment does depend, as George said earlier, somewhat on the definition of cruel and unusual punishment, does depend on this evolving, maturing public opinion. It's an odd thing for the Supreme Court to be basing its decisions on.
Well, but we have to remember that while the justices are there for a lifetime appointment, the people who appoint them are not, and that is a very political thing, and also that they don't operate in a vacuum as much as PR tells us that they do, that they're not immune to public opinion, and public opinion seems to be shifting or has shifted to the point where it says, there is now evidence that can indicate a truer admission, a truer indication of guilt or innocence before the sophistication, the evolving sophistication of DNA, that B, over 100 people, I guess, in the last several years have been determined to be innocent who were thought to be guilty originally, and there's this reluctance to execute people who may not have earned that execution.
But you get to the heart of the matter, which is we have legislatures which are professionals at registering evolving standards of decency. The fact is the Supreme Court, impatient as often it is with democracy, and believing that it will indeed rule us like a bevy of Platonic guardians, said, we know better than the legislatures. And that's really the question here, is this a super legislature?
Another area where the courts have been very active is one that we've talked a lot about this week, because many of us have celebrated the passage of Title IX, the civil rights law that says education must be equal for men and women. And the place that it is most affected has been women's athletics. The changes in the numbers of women who play college and high school and professional athletics in the 30 years since the law passed is phenomenal, geometric. But there's a lot of concern that it's hurting men and that the regulations should be loosened. Karen?
Stop whining. Grow up. Actually, what it did was guarantee the opportunity for women to participate. And I think that what people are forgetting is that involvement in sports goes beyond the physical benefit of what accrues to women, that there's greater confidence, there's greater ability to work as a team, and that those things show up as a benefit later on in life, and those benefits do accrue to men eventually. You would like to have your colleagues understand you when you're talking to them, have a somewhat of a worldview that you're speaking on the same plane. You would like to have daughters that are more physically fit. So I don't know that this is a horrible, horrible thing to have happened.
It happened not, however, because of Title IX. Title IX was passed in 1972. It was unenforced and unenforceable because no regulations were written until 1979. Until the late 80s, they didn't apply to athletics, by which time the driving force of this, which is increased female participation at the high school level, had gone from 1 in 4 to 1 in 3. Now, that's the so-called Title IX revolution. And what it has produced at the college level is the killing of more than 400 men's sports to produce a dogmatic statistical parity between women's participation and men, assuming in a kind of government-imposed androgyny that men and women are exactly alike in their sports interests, which is preposterous.
I think that I agree with George, because I think my generation was sort of tricked on issues of gender equality. We were taught that, you know, men and women are exactly the same, will have exactly the same kinds of, should have exactly the same kinds of participation in all these things, 50-50 or whatever the proportions are. Then we got married. Then we had kids, and we discovered that men and women are very different, and that it begins very young. And I think we should be able to live with the diversity of saying that in some places, in some fields, there will be 60-40 men, and in other places, 60-40 women.
But
the idea that you have to have an exact replication.
One of the places where there were 60-40 men was in college admissions. And that has changed because of sex-blind admissions to college. And now the majority of students in colleges in America are female. That has changed partly because of the change in the law.
Let me ask you, Title IX acolytes, a question. If it is terribly important that there be statistical parity in participation of men and women in sports, why not in the engineering department? Why not in other extracurricular activities like choir or drama or cheerleading? Why not?
Well, I mean, we have to look back at the fact that what this did was open opportunities for women, that before this passed, you had women in law schools, the number was like this. Women in medical schools, there was actually quotas to ensure that medical schools were not, gasp, overrun with the idea of people who possess fallopian tubes. So now we look 30 years later, and what you have is law schools that are about 45%, medical schools that are, by some statistics, 51%, which is pretty amazing, and not everybody has to have a male gynecologist. So this could be construed as progress, George.
Well, we will let Karen have that last word, I happily say. And when we come back, the George Will commentary. This week, George bids a fond farewell to Jesse Ventura. Stay with us.
On. Off. On.
You okay, Bob?
Off. Genius. No $2 million up front. No, that'll take 10 months. No, bought the wrong software. Utilities. Genius. Anyway, night.
E-business infrastructure at the flick of a switch. Introducing the next utility, E-business on demand.
Philosophy 101? Not today. Grad school? Later. Taking the bar? Maybe someday. The AIM College Savings Plan lets you invest up to $250,000 and your earnings grow tax-free. So when they're ready for college, you will be too. See your financial advisor. Your goals, our discipline. AIM.
Every day, millions of people count on Williams to power their lives. To find, store, manage, and move almost every form of energy. From wherever it is to wherever it's needed. Cleanly, reliably, and efficiently. So to all those millions of people who count on Williams, now you know who's leading energy solutions.
Spin, spin, spin the globe. It's your turn to spin the globe. Spin it, spin it, spin it.
All around the world, Siemens is helping people work together, even when they're not together. From next-generation internet to mobile business solutions, we're giving people the freedom to communicate better.
Spin, spin, spin the globe. It's your turn to spin the globe.
Yeah, man. Summertime.
The Canon Greater Hartford Open. Final round today on ABC.
The LA Times says Houston Medical outshines even ER. It's taught, stunning, and captured magnificently.
If I can't fight for the guy that needs me the most, then there's no reason for me to be here.
Better than any reality-based venture ever.
Why is this happening to me?
This is true reality television. Houston Medical, Tuesday at 10/9 Central on ABC.
George Will says goodbye this week to Jesse Ventura.
George, Jesse Ventura has been a human volcano, a volcano constantly erupting with flamboyance and opinions. Now he is going to extinguish himself. This Navy SEAL, professional wrestler, bodyguard for the Rolling Stones, and current governor of Minnesota says he will not seek re-election. He says he is tired of the media attention. This from a man who used to wear a feather boa to work, who as governor sometimes gave 25 interviews a week, and who liked being seen with such shrinking violets as Donald Trump and John McCain. Well, Ventura's agony of publicity will now abate. He was elected in 1998, the year of Monica and impeachment. The country needed comic relief. But he had a serious program, and he has been a passable governor, at least when not participating in wrestling spectacles and broadcasting football spectacles and selling books. Ventura has been called an American original. Not entirely. Over the years, populists have sprouted like corn from the American prairie, most of them shouting resentment of Eastern power and pretensions. Kansan Mary Elizabeth Lease told farmers to raise less corn and more hell. Nebraskan William Jennings Bryan was the Democrats' presidential nominee 3 times, the first time in 1896 at age 36. More recently, this man, you remember, Ross Perot, said what Ventura says. Good government is simple. Anyone can do it. Just ignore the wicked special interests. Some voters say they like Ventura because in an era of synthetic politicians, he seems authentic. They are mistaken. Actually, Ventura is completely synthetic, brazenly and unapologetically synthetic. He seems to say politics has become a circus, a sham, a burlesque, like professional wrestling, and I won't pretend otherwise. But such cheerful frivolity was a casualty of this.
God, this is so terrible.
Ventura seems very dated now, but for a while he was fun, at least from afar.
Thanks, George. Koki and I will be back after this.
Moo. For a super deal on a computer, just call 1-800-GATEWAY. Because right now you can get a Gateway 300 SE desktop fully loaded with an Intel Celeron processor, 128 megabytes of memory, and a monitor, all for just $5.99. Plus, Plus, for a limited time, we'll even include a free CD burner. But hurry, this deal won't last forever, so call 1-800-GATEWAY today. That's 1-800-GATEWAY.
Well, we first noticed that something was wrong with Christina when she was around 9 months old.
Approximately 3,000 people in the United States have Gaucher's disease.
She was very, very sick and really close to death.
Pharmaceutical companies have developed hundreds of medicines for cancer, heart disease, Alzheimer's, stroke, as well as for rare diseases. Medicines for millions and medicines for only a few.
Christina was the 13th person in the world to be put on the drug.
There's a remarkable change once they're on this drug, such that their life has really returned almost to normal.
I want to be a screenwriter or an archaeologist.
Gaucher's disease is a disease which is genetic in nature.
I work studying the human genome to find new ways to treat disease.
The researchers saved Christina's life, without a doubt.
You go into work every day, and you never know what day you're going to make the big discovery. It's a great time to be a scientist.
She's a pretty amazing girl.
We understand. Dreams do not come with expiration dates. Emergencies never check your calendar. And life does not always stick to the game plan. We're Household, and we understand the hopes and financial needs of everyday people. That's why for nearly 125 years, we've specialized in loans, credit, and understanding. Household, helping everyday people, every day.
That weekend is good. See you then.
Going away for a weekend? Then live like a high roller. Go from your hotel to the movies, the shopping malls, and the sports bars.
I thought you liked to eat caviar and watch polo.
Not in this economy.
Make the most of your weekend. Book by June 28th for Courtyard Come Out and Play rates.
We'll send you a postcard.
Yeah, whatever.
You must book your weekend rate by June 28th. Call 1-800-MARRIOTT.
Juliana McCourt, age 4, Flight 175, World Trade Center. How will we remember Juliana? Call 1-800-VOLUNTEER.
Brad Pitt in Meet Joe Black, ABC Monday, 8, 7 Central.
Tomorrow on Good Morning America, more details on the mysterious death of St. Louis Cardinals pitcher Darryl Kile.
Sam Donaldson will be back on Sunday. Until next week, that's This Week.
We're Pfizer. We're looking for a cure for your father's Alzheimer's, your sister's heart condition, your best friend's diabetes. We're spending over $5 billion on research this year and have 12,000 scientists and health experts looking for the cures of the future. Why do we work so hard? Because we have fathers, sisters, and best friends too. Pfizer. Life is our life's work.
This has been a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source. ABC News, now traveling to all 50 states in 50 weeks in search of America.
The final. Catch live coverage of the World Cup final next Sunday morning at 6:30 Eastern.
ABC Sports Championship Television.
It's amazing how many of the things we value in Oregon grow out of our forest, like clean water, recreation, a diverse economy. The question is, how do we balance these? And how do we make sure that the environmental, social, and economic benefits will always be there? You're invited to help answer that question and to help Oregon strike the right balance. Here's how you can join the discussion about sustaining all the benefits that come from our forests.
Sometimes I need quiet. Sometimes I need peace. Sometimes I need to get away.
The Lexus ES300, a new world of luxury. See Lexus of Portland.
Watch the KTU Spirit of America Parade July 4th at 10 a.m.